Yeah.
So when you're making 17 million a year and you ring the bell and you think that you've actually made it in life and you have the wife and the boat and the cars and the kids, and you look around and you go, I'm a fraud.
Yeah.
I've reached the pinnacle of everything I ever wanted and I'm miserable.
Yeah.
That's when you really say to yourself, oh my God, I must be really screwed up because if I have all these things and I'm still unhappy, I must be screwed up.
Yeah.
No. You might be screwed up because you have all these things.
Wow. Henry Rodriguez has achieved what some would view as the pinnacle of the American dream. He has achieved a 9-figure personal net worth and the kids, the wife, the boat, and even the social clout. And at the peak of his outward success, he was the most unhappy he's ever been. In this episode, we discuss what true fulfillment looks like and how it requires balancing what he calls the 4 pillars of health, wealth, spirituality, and finances, and how time is the ultimate currency and peace is the ultimate goal. We talk about how seeking money for the external validation is unfulfilling and how satisfaction can only come from experiencing the present moment fully. If you find yourself constantly thinking that you'll be happy if you had more money, a relationship, or you want to know where true fulfillment comes from, this episode is for you. So without further ado, please enjoy this episode of the Hard for Life podcast. You are listening to the Hard for Life podcast with Thomas Scott. Who is Henry Rodriguez?
Henry Rodriguez is nothing more than an ordinary guy who's learned an extraordinary fact that peace is the most important thing in life.
Wow.
And coming from a chaotic background, poverty, wanting money at all costs, and achieving basketball player money, and by 2007,
Wow.
making tremendous amounts of money. What is that? 10-figure net worth. Knowing those things about my past, and knowing that in 2008 financial crisis, I had a major financial meltdown where I lost 90% of my net worth. And,
Wow.
It was very painful because the ensuing 7 years were, lawsuits, investigations, potential divorces. We reconciled. It was a very bumpy marriage, a lot of stress. I would say that, detoxing from benzodiazepines. I mean, I went through the dark night of the soul, not for 1 year, not for one day, but for like 7 to 8 years. Yeah. And it started in 2008. So Henry Rodriguez today is a person that realizes that time is the ultimate currency, peace is the ultimate goal, and anything that takes away my peace is too expensive. So
wow.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
What I'm hearing you share is that really you've tested the walls and the limits of life, and you have some credibility when you're talking because you've hit the pinnacle of wealth. You've done the drugs.
Yeah.
You've had the marriage. You've lived in Tulum. We're here recording in beautiful Tulum, Mexico, and you're living this free lifestyle now.
Yes.
And there are, because of how hard you have lived life, there are some truths that you have found.
Yeah.
And so I would love to, if you're open to it, uncovering a little bit more of that. And to help us do that, I'd love to hear a little bit more about your story in depth.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I'll try to just do it at 30,000 foot level. Born from Cuban immigrants, Washington, the town of Washington, New York City suburb. Moved to Woodmere, Long Island, which is a very wealthy Jewish community. I was the son of the superintendent. My father was a very big optimist. My mother was a very fearful woman. So I had both in my life, and what really shaped my life is that, in a negative and positive way, is that I grew up in a very rich neighborhood, being very poor.
Yeah.
So I knew it's not that I was on the other side of the tracks. No, I was on the right side of the tracks with the wrong pocketbook.
Yeah.
So I thought that if I made money, I would have the women, the power, the everything. And then eventually I became in politics and, was very close to 2 governors and on Space Florida, all these economic development boards, all these prestigious appointments 2007, made the most that I've ever made in a year, 17 million, and
Wow.
was about ready. And that's after a $2 million deduction,
Yeah. Wow. Wow.
on a charitable contribution, and feeling miserable.
Wow.
Yeah.
What did that 17 million cost you? Because everyone looks at the money and they're like, I want 17 million. Like if I had 17 million, oh, life will be fine. Like, what's the old adage? It's like, money can't buy happiness, but it sure helps, is what people say. But I'm curious, what did that 17 million cost you in your life to reach it?
It cost me my soul.
Wow.
It cost me my soul because of the way I did it.
Wow.
All I was thinking about is money and money alone.
Yeah.
And that if I got money, I would have respect.
Yeah.
And, money's only important if you don't have it. Once you have it, you realize it's not as important as you thought it was.
It's interesting because I imagine that applies to pretty much anything that's external to us in this world. Right? Because how many men do we know doing this men's work that they think getting the women, like if I have the most beautiful woman, or if I have multiple women, somehow there's my fulfillment.
Right.
Or if I have all the money, there's my fulfillment.
Right.
Or if I have anything that's external, because when I hear you talk about peace, I imagine it's not external peace that you're speaking of.
No.
What is the peace that you're actually speaking of?
Actually, all those distractions is what gives you chaos in your life. Okay. So you could be with the most beautiful woman. You could be with the most beautiful man if you're female. It doesn't matter. Ultimately, it is the beauty inside that matters.
Yeah.
Beauty on the outside is a depreciating asset. Wow. Finances is an appreciating asset, for instance, right? You can't exchange one for the other.
Wow.
And the reality is that I heard that from Jamie Dimon, so I'm not going to take that for myself.
Yeah.
But what's really important and timeless is that internal beauty. And that means your own internal beauty, your own internal peace, right? So you can't have peace that's from the external because ultimately all those things are going to change. How many times have you heard a man or a woman say, oh, I'm not with the hottest woman or with the hottest man? And after a year, they're not even having sex with the person because they got so bored of them. It happens all the time. You have to have substance in your life. And if you're always looking for the outside for validation, that's called significance. Yeah. And significance is the cohort of the ego. And the ego is always going to get you in trouble.
Wow. I would agree with everything that you're saying, because for me, peace is also a fundamental pillar of my life. And to pursue money or to pursue anything without that level of peace, it is ultimately empty. Like I've experienced that too. Like when I get there, I think the thing that I'm trying to achieve is going to give me that peace, or it's going to give me the freedom, or it's going to give me something that I'm lacking. So I relate really deeply with that. And it's about finding that in the present moment right now. And that's the only place that it can exist. And, the theme of this podcast is becoming profoundly intimate with life. And I imagine that if it was that easy to find that peace, everyone would have it, right? So I'm curious, what was the process that it took for you to be able to find this peace for yourself?
It was a painful process.
I bet.
I mean, pain to passion. I mean, pain to purpose. That's what happened to me, except my pain lasted, for almost 50 years.
Wow.
You know what I mean? It was like extraordinary. I didn't go on my personal development until I hit 48, 49, around there. And for me, ultimately finding peace is through the acknowledgement that materialism and all these things that I thought would bring me happiness never did. Yeah. So when you're making 17 million a year and you ring the bell and you think that you've actually made it in life and you have the wife and the boat and the cars and the kids, and you look around and you go, I'm a fraud.
Yeah.
I've reached the pinnacle of everything I ever wanted, close to the governors, close to judges, close to politicians, all in Florida, and on the accountability commission of Space Canaveral, Airport Authority chairman, all these things. Yeah. you reach, had it all. Film festival chairman and board, and I'm miserable.
Yeah.
That's when you really say to yourself, oh my God, I must be really screwed up because if I have all these things and I'm still unhappy, I must be screwed up.
Yeah.
No. You might be screwed up because you have all these things.
Wow. I see that. And at the same time, all these things aren't bad.
No.
It's just the perspective in which we are using them to validate our lives or making it mean something about who we are.
Yeah.
Because for me, the game of finding peace it's been a very painful journey as well. And it's one that's required me to die to the versions of myself that, how do I want to frame it? They are the versions of me that someone else told me I needed to be. Whether that was my parents, whether that was society, whether that's looking at the celebrities who are driving the Ferraris and having the big homes and thinking that there's something there. And in reality, what I've found, and I imagine what I'm hearing you say, is that that's all empty without a deeper level. And we can see that. I mean, look at how many celebrities are known for having drug overdoses and addictions, even though somehow they've reached that pinnacle.
Yeah.
Why on earth do they need those types of things? Why do they need those substances?
Yeah.
Why is it that they seem to be utterly alone in life?
Well, there's two things to that, two kind of puzzles. From the day you're born, you're being told you're not good enough.
Yeah.
Trillions of dollars in advertising are selling. If you don't have the Nike, if you don't have the shoes, you're not going to jump like Michael Jordan. If you don't have the car, you're not going to have that beautiful woman. You're not good enough if you don't have enough money. You're not good enough if you don't have that car. You're not good enough if you don't have anything. So the whole society is based upon you're not good enough. Yeah. And so if we're born into a society that's telling us we're not good enough unless we have all these things, then we get them and we don't feel good enough anyway.
Oh, yeah. Because they can't make you feel good enough.
Right.
Yeah.
We realize that the whole society is based on a concept called deferred satisfaction. When I get this, I'm going to be happy. Yeah. When you get there, you're not happy. Oh, so when I'll get this, you're going to be happy. Same thing. When I make my next 10 million, I'm going to be happy. When I make my next 100 million, I'll be happy. Yeah. I've known guys that says, when I'm a billionaire, I'll be happy. You know, your amount of focus that you put on money is in direct proportion to the quality of life you're going to have, because you're going to have to, absent being a Bitcoin billionaire that just happened to have made it rich, you know, or so you're going to have to work like hell to get to that point where you're going to be a billionaire. It's not easy, right? Yeah. So you better pick a net worth that's in proportion to the amount of time you're willing to put into making that money, because you're going to sacrifice your wife, your kids, your family, your friends. Things are going to break. So like, money is important. And I always say it's very important to have spiritual, mental, physical, and financial balance, right? The four pillars, what I call the four pillars. Money is important. There's nothing wrong with money. But what happens so often is you'll see a billionaire that is I just met one in Tulum just recently, you know, a friend of our friend. And, you know, he's like totally ADD, not present, went to lunch with me, he's like, you know, has this security company and like, he's completely lost. Yeah. And what is it, you know, like Christ said, he says, what does it benefit to gain the whole world but forfeit your own soul? Yeah. I mean, listen to the guys that know what they're talking about. Jesus in this case, you know, Buddha, the same thing. Everybody says that. It's like, but we somehow believe that the myth that these advertisers want us to believe in, a consumer-led society, that we're not good enough unless we have all these things. Have all these things, and we realize that it's worthless. Yeah.
For me, what's so important and why I'm so blessed to have you on this podcast and to hear you share your message is that Jesus didn't have $100 million. So it's easy to look at Jesus and be like, well, Jesus was broke as shit. So should I really trust him because everyone else is showing me this beautiful picture? And you're saying, I've made $100 million. It ain't shit.
Yeah.
You're like, go listen to the guy that was broke because he figured something out, that he didn't have any money and was speaking about fulfillment, speaking about purpose. And he was so deeply connected to his purpose that he was willing to die for it. And he proved that.
Yeah.
And, you know, when you speak, my heart breaks when we talk about this not enough thing, because male suicide is at an outrageous proportion right now. And I imagine some of that is because so many young men see this vision of what enough is supposed to look like and realize they're never going to hit it. They're never going to have the Ferrari. They're never going to have the celebrity wife. They're never going to have the hundreds of millions of dollars. So they check out because the pressure's too big to try to feel like they're enough in whatever that actually means for them.
Right.
And it's heartbreaking. It's one of the reasons why I'm doing this, because I want men to start to see that feeling of enough can't come from anything external.
It can't. I mean, it is true that male suicide is through the roof, 3 times more than women. And if you take a look at, when I wrote my book, like there's multiple studies that I've looked at. And when I looked at, one of the things I looked at is suicide by country.
Wow.
So when you look at the United States, China, Japan, Northern European countries, those are the ones with the highest suicide rate. Wow. What is the lowest suicide rate? Barbados. Now think about what that says.
Yeah. I'm sure in Tulum too, it's lower at the very least, at least from anybody that's a native here who is living the lifestyle, because it's just
a native living. Let's take Tulum, for instance. I'm not sure that that's the case, only because this is the Instagram capital of the world, or was a couple of years ago. It's probably some new place now. But Instagram and social media has exploded that concept of like, you're not good enough.
Yeah.
And the reason why is you got the top 1/10 of 1% of the most happiest moments of everybody's life being posted on that social media platform. Yeah. And then some poor little girl or little boy in Nebraska somewhere is looking at this, this social media platform and thinking, oh, how come I'm not feeling good? Yeah. Why am I the only one? Yeah. Seems like everybody else is like completely joyful, completely happy. Yeah. And I'm miserable. Yeah. Why? Yeah. Right? And so the countries that don't have that comparison, that need for significance, i.e., believe it or not, I'll be criticized for this because I'm Cuban American, Cuba, okay? They have family, connections. They have, and that's what Barbados has, family, connections. Wow. Maybe they drink a little bit too much, but you know what? They live life. Yeah. And I'm not anti-money. I can't be a hypocrite and say, I'm a millionaire, so therefore now you don't need to be one. No. I'm saying put money in its proportion. Multiple studies from Harvard University to Stanford, they all have said that after a certain level of sustenance, meaning in the United States it was $70,000 to $90,000 a year, money's ability to make you incrementally happy diminishes, and it actually has a reverse effect once you have too much money, because in order to make too much money, you have to spend too much time making money. Yeah. And that means no connections and the things that are really valuable in life.
Okay. So we're talking about how it's about becoming enough within yourself. Mm-hmm. And I'm curious how someone in your perspective actually does that, because we're speaking about money right now. And sometimes I know in my own life, I felt like until I made a certain level of money, I was in survival mode, and it really didn't fucking matter. If I'm a father and having to work 2 jobs in order to just put a roof over the head of my children, how does that even relate to becoming enough and all these types of things?
Yeah. So, in my opinion, the most important and most biggest achievement you can make is having children. And at the end of your life, having your 2 children or 3 children or 4 children or 1 child tell you they love you. That is the most important, most successful part of life. And I saw that in a reel, quite honestly. I mean, I took it and I looked at it. I was like, wow, that's true. Yeah. It is amazing. My children call me every day or every other day and say, Dad, I love you. Yeah. That to me is the ultimate crown achievement. Wow. So let's start with there, right? Mm-hmm. So if you're struggling, you're in survival, I agree with you. There's a certain level of sustenance that people need to have in order to not feel strangled. Yeah. But the problem and the reason why people are so often in survival is because they believe, I hate using this term, the matrix. Yeah. They believe that you're not good enough. So therefore, let's go out and buy a car and get in debt.
Yep.
Let's go out and buy some clothes and get in 24% interest debt. Let's go out and, debt, if you trace the origins of the word, comes from death.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow.
So everybody in America and around the world in industrialized nation are in debt to their eyeballs, while the millionaires and billionaires are making more and more money. Why? And they're feeling more and more miserable, the people underneath, because they bought into this concept that they're not good enough if they don't have these things. So they finance them. Yeah. And then they get into more debt. Wow. And then eventually feel not good enough because they're feeling miserable because why isn't there $100,000 a year enough? Well, that's because you're outspending the money.
Yeah.
And you're paying the banks and the rich people 24% interest.
Yeah. Well, and it's back to that Instagram thing, right? Absolutely. Why are you spending all the money? Because you got to look superficially on the outside like you are successful.
Right.
You got to look successful. Well, the only way you can look successful is you got the watch, you got the clothes, you got the car.
Absolutely.
And then behind it all is crushing debt, like you said.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a consumer-led society.
And it's not even fulfilling.
Right.
It's like, I've had the cars, I've had the clothes. You get it and you're like, wow, this is cool. And then I had a race car. Like, it was so fast. I beat people at the light, 50, 100 times, drained my gas tank. It was great. And then it was done. It was kind of like, okay, I did it.
How many times have you bought a car and no one can go in it? Nobody could eat in it. No one could do anything. Yeah. And then 3 weeks later, you have people throwing French fries on the floor.
Absolutely.
Because you don't care anymore. And what you care about is the $700 a month payment that you're making, after the first month or 2 months. Yeah. So the dopamine effect from materialism is short-lived. And I call it the dopamine effect because all these things, beautiful women, beautiful men, shiny objects, materialism, it's all dopamine led, and dopamine is not a sustainable, substance that's going to keep you happy. Serotonin is, right? So how do you do it? You go through fulfillment. Yeah. Fulfillment is finding your passion, finding your purpose, having connection with people. Yes. Making enough money where you could feel good, not being in debt, I mean, these are the things that are going to make you long-term fulfilled. You're not going to sit at the end there's the thing on the internet where Steve Jobs is talking about what he would have done differently, Yeah. And it's true. You could buy a Cartier that, by the way, I don't have a watch, I do have a Cartier that I put away in a safe, and I don't use it. Yeah. I just put it away because it was given to me as a gift 20, 30 years ago. But it's like that Cartier, whether it's worth $30,000, $40,000, or a Swatch watch, it's still going to tell the same time. A Ferrari or a Volkswagen, it's still going to take you to the same place. Yeah. It's just such an illusion that you need these things in order to feel better.
Well, and I think this applies to men and women because what I'm about to say, because my girlfriend, Taylor, is in her purpose as well. I want to talk about purpose and how I think that's the cure to this survival mode piece, right? Because when we're in our purpose, and our purpose is very unique to us. Your purpose could be being a kayak instructor. Your purpose could be being a waitress or a waiter. It doesn't fucking matter what it is. It's that societal, you're not enough if you are, if someone is deeply fulfilled by being a waiter or waitress, how damaging is that societal thing that you need to be a mogul in business or you need to be a celebrity in order to be successful?
Yeah.
It fucks people's heads and it distracts them. And what I know to be true is that when I'm in my purpose, not only am I willing to suffer and struggle for it, that is the key to freedom, and it's the key to real success and real fulfillment. And the money comes. Everyone talks about, when you do something that's very fulfilling, the money will come. It will come because you'll do it for free.
Yeah.
That's what makes you magnetic.
That's right.
And I imagine to the person who's working 2 jobs to maintain some sort of lifestyle, to maintain some sort of persona, it's really about taking the time to stop and find what true purpose is for that individual.
Absolutely. Look, I'm a realist, right?
Yeah.
So like, I understand, I get asked all the time, well, I got a job. I can't afford to, find my passion and purpose. I got to feed my family. Get it. Get it.
Yeah.
Get out of debt is the first thing I'm telling you. In any way you possibly can, get out of debt, because all you're doing is making someone else rich and making yourself miserable. Okay. So that's the first thing. I get that people have a 9-to-5 job, but I'm saying do it on the weekends, do it at night until you can eventually find your purpose and passion. And how do you find your purpose and passion? What did you like to do when you were a kid? That's how you find it. Whatever that was, do it. And you find your purpose and passion. Give you an example. My son was, I hope he doesn't kill me for this, was miserable. He was 28 years old, didn't know what he wanted. And he was doing kind of like these video game designs, right? And all of a sudden, like, my other son tells me, hey, Dad, I have this like little supercomputer that does video game designs. And he starts posting them, right? My other son, we bought him it for Christmas. He starts posting it. It was his passion and purpose. Everything else he was doing, he was jumping from job to job to job to job. He wasn't happy. He was miserable. He didn't, nothing. And all of a sudden, like now, the guy from, I don't know, one of the biggest, I'm not a video gamer or anything like that, but one of the biggest video game companies in the world, like the owner, saw him on Twitter and YouTube and just put it on his website, and he exploded.
Wow.
He's gotten offers from Amazon. Wow. He's gotten offers from, he's working at a major corporation right now. He does this. He's one of the video designers, and he does this out of purpose and passion. He loves it. Yeah. I hope his employer's not looking, but he would do it for free. Yeah. You know what I mean?
That's the point.
And that's his purpose.
Yeah.
But until he found his purpose and passion, he knew he had to make money. So he was doing these other jobs that were making him miserable. Yeah. I hate to say it, but he did it on the weekends and on night, and he took off.
The other thing that comes up for me that I can't speak to that I would love to get your perspective on is, like, I'm deeply in my purpose right now. I've fought to find it. It took me years. It's not something that just you wake up and you're like, oh, there it is. It's like you got to try things, and you keep going down the path of what feels good. Like Joseph Campbell says, follow your bliss.
Yes.
And we think what feels good, this is what we're talking about right now, is the car or the money or whatever. And the real what feels good for me was service. It's anything related to service. Right. And I had this idea of service as like going to a homeless shelter, and no, my service is the thing that actually lights me up, because in giving it, it lights other people up too. At the same time, I've heard a number of men share with me, and I imagine women feel this too, that their purpose is their children. So if it's a father, he's like, well, my purpose is my kids.
Beautiful.
I think that's beautiful. But what I'm curious about is, can you have your children as a purpose and have an even deeper or larger purpose in service to something greater? Or is just having your children as a purpose enough?
Oh, just having your children as a purpose is enough. And I'll tell you why. And I say this because I was in a traditional 1950s marriage. I was the provider. My wife would stay at home and take care of the kids. I was absent because I was putting too much time, effort, and everything into making money, right? And providing. I was the provider. Yeah. What they really wanted from me is my emotions. What they really wanted from me is my time. Wow. And I didn't have it. Yeah. I was out. That's why I'm saying, be careful what you want in life, because if you want to make that million, fine. No, there's going to be a sacrifice. Short of having, hitting it big on Bitcoin or hitting something, like hitting the lottery or something like that. It's going to take a lot of time making that money. 10 million. The higher you go, the more it's going to take for you to make that money. And it's going to really affect your lifestyle. Wow. It's going to affect the most important things in your life, your connections. So when you say, can someone like have a 9-to-5 job and be like slap happy because they're just providing for their kids? Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely. Wow. Because when those kids grow up and they hug you and they love you and they thank you, that ultimately is the ultimate like validation of your life. Yeah. What are we here on this earth for? Is to give back, right? That's my opinion. Yeah. But also to procreate. Yeah. That's what God wants us to do. And if you could actually enlighten the people that you're procreating, that's like amazing. Wow.
What comes up is
big purpose.
Yeah. Well, I'm like thinking about that other piece of validation that we were talking about earlier. So there's the money aspect. And then as a man, I know in my past, I really cared about women. It was like I was trying to find the most beautiful woman, all these kinds of things. And I found a pinnacle 10 out of 10 woman for myself. And that game goes forever. It's like if you're just seeking the validation of it, if I was just seeking the validation of like finding that pinnacle woman and she's like a trophy as opposed to someone I want to build something with, or just have sex with, it's so meaningless and empty. And it does lead to just continuing. It's like a seeking for the next one, just like buying something else. And, you know, one of the things we've talked about that I'm curious if you're willing to go here with me is around relationships and how like finding one person and creating with them as opposed to just trying to have sex with the hottest women, I imagine leads to deeper fulfillment in every area of life. I know for me it has. And, you know, for you, I know you very well. I know you've been married for a long time. And you've even gone through the divorce. You were married for a long time. You've even gone through the divorce and now you're finding your way back. What is it that having this one woman has done for you beyond?
Oh God, it's like life changing, you know. And I don't mind saying it in terms of the finances. You know, a lot of guys are saying, you're willing to give up 50% of what you had. Well, if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't be as wealthy as I am now. And the reason why I say that is because monogamy, everybody poo-poos it and everybody says, oh, you know, it's like the thing of the past and who wants to get married, or, okay, you don't have to be married. Okay, fine. But at least monogamy is not a poo-pooable concept, because those that are in these relationships or dating all the time, or they're 50-year-old playboy or whatnot, it takes a lot of time, effort to do all that in dating sites and swiping and hitting girls up at the store. And I mean, you're constantly chasing and cutting and rejection and this and that and the other. And it's like, there's no stability in your personal life. How can there be any prosperity in your business life? You know, so if you have something stable in your personal life, then that allows you to go out and hunt. You know, and it allows you to actually grow your business, grow your wealth. So not only is it important from a personal perspective, fulfillment, but it's also very important from the perspective of like making money, if that's important to you, or, you know, building a business or going after your passion, you know?
Well, okay. So what we've been speaking about now is money, women, cars. There's a level of like the American dream. And I know you're putting out a book. And there has been this old American dream, which the way I heard it was like, you know, the 2.5 kids, white picket fence, colonial house with the car and the wife. That was the old American dream. And then I think we've pendulum swung to a new American dream, which is like ultimate freedom, 15, like as a man, 15 women, you know, the Dan Bilzerian, making $1 million every year, like living a wild lifestyle. And I'm curious what your perspective is on the American dream. Is there a new American dream? Are there what needs to happen with the American dream?
Yeah, so it's morphed. Everybody thinks it's like an American dream, one American dream. So in 1934, there was a book written. I forgot the guy's name. It's in my book. But he coined the word American dream. It was right during the Depression, right? And it was more about upward mobility and connections, completely different from what we've come to know it today. Then it became the white picket fence that you were talking about. Then during Reagan, it became like, whoa, that's glitz, glamour, and like we're living big. Our country's back. It's the shining hill on the, you know, it's a shining city on the hill. And like Reaganism, which I was part of, you know, and I was young during that time. That's when materialism just exploded. And it went into the 90s, you know, with the same type of momentum. And then somehow or another, it's morphed into like entitlement, and like we could have now everything without working for it, or everything without wanting it. But the ultimate American dream for me, I don't know if it's an American dream, is life's dream, is to live experiences over materialism. So if I'm going to take $100,000 and buy a Ferrari or 200,000, you know how many experiences you could have with that? And when you're sitting on your deathbed, you're not going to be saying, oh my God, you know, I could have bought that friggin' latest model Ferrari. No, instead, I friggin' lived life. I went to Argentina, I went to Antarctica, whatever your thing is, I went here. I made connections with friends. I raised some great kids. I put time and effort into the things that are actually matter in life, which is human connection. You know, in a Harvard study, it's the largest sociological study of its kind. I don't know how they even funded. They took 700 kids and, you know, like, I think they were 15 years old. One of them was a president, John F. Kennedy. A third from tenement buildings, a third from middle-class families, and a third from like wealthy families. And they studied them, did blood tests, brain scans. It's amazing how much money, like, you know, and they followed them all the way through to the 80s, how much money Harvard spent on this. And what did they find out at the end of the study? Human connection was the most important thing to fulfillment.
That's amazing.
That's it. It wasn't money. It wasn't anything. Again, we go back to the concept of like the 4 pillars. You have to have spiritual, mental, physical, and financial, right? You know, I was talking about earlier about a man that I met here in Tulum that owns a security company up in Boston. Now, you might know him, you know, I don't know. And very wealthy guy. He couldn't stay focused for 1 second during lunch. I felt insulted, right? I felt insulted that he'd even invite me to lunch. He's like, hold on a second. And he was like 310 pounds. Wow. You know what I mean? And I'm like, is that success that a guy's putting so much effort into making money that he's forgotten the temple of his soul? Yeah. You know, so that's why I say the physical is important. Yeah. The soul, and if you're not taking care of the physical, the soul's not going to feel good either. You know, and you know, and your mind is not going to feel good. So if you can balance the spiritual, mental, physical, and the financial, that's the ultimate game in life. But in terms of experiences, that's the new American dream. I mean, that's it.
Yeah, and I imagine when you're in balance, that's the answer to the peace that we were talking about earlier.
Absolutely,
is like. Peace comes from being in balance. And when something's out of balance, you're out of peace.
Right.
And so I'm with you all the way. That's the conclusion I've come to in life as well.
Yes.
Is that it's really about the healing. It's about doing the work to find your purpose, serve, heal all your bullshit.
Yes.
And master your physical, like your body, your mental.
Yeah, your health is your wealth. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, do you think for one moment that if the doctor would have run to like Steve Jobs' like deathbed and said, I got the cure, but you got to give me all your net worth. What do you think Steve Jobs would have done?
Yeah. There's a really amazing TikTok I've seen going around many times where it was basically like, I don't know if I'm going to quote this right. I might cut this out, but it was basically, if you could have $10 million right now, but it meant that this was your last day on earth, would you take it? Nobody said yes.
Right.
Nobody said yes.
Right. Couldn't even enjoy it.
No.
And that's, you know, it's funny you say that, because the reality is I lived in Sarasota, Florida, where rich people come down to retire. Yeah. And so often they've built their businesses. They've worked a whole lifetime being executives of major Fortune 500 companies. They got all their stock options. They come down, they're like 60, 65. 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, they die. They die.
Wow.
It's happened a lot.
They worked their whole life to get to a certain point.
Yeah.
And then they make it, but they didn't experience anything in between.
Right.
And then kick the bucket.
And they die. I have no idea why that happens, but it happens a lot.
That's so fascinating.
Or they get depressed.
Yeah.
You know, it also reminds me of like this whole concept of like what the American dream is, right?
Yeah.
It's no longer the white picket fence. No, it's the mansion on the beach now. Yeah. With the hot woman, with the kids, with the dogs. Has to be 2 golden retrievers, not 1 golden retriever now. Everything has to be a Ferrari or two, and maybe a Bentley and a service, and being able, private jet too.
Yeah.
That's the American dream, and you're going to be fulfilled. All right. This is something that's so funny. I put out an Instagram reel and it got more hits than ever, and the TikTok too. It got more hits than any other reel I've put out. So I lived in a place called Casey Key, Florida, where realtors would take you to the beach and have a bottle of champagne and 2 glasses two champagne glasses, and at sunset. And all these very intellectual, smart businessmen and women, would go to the beach, make multi-million-dollar decisions, anywhere between 10 to 15 to 20, who knows, to $25 million decisions, right? And we lived on that island for like 10 years. And me and my wife would like go down with the dogs up and down. And for a mile this way or a mile behind, no one was on the beach.
Wow.
The people that bought those houses never went on the beach that they had the illusion of being on.
Wow.
And that's a fact. I mean, I was seeing it over and over and over and over again. So what a friggin' letdown.
Yeah.
And one of them actually said to me, I couldn't believe she said this. She goes, how many waves can I count? Yeah. Seriously, true story.
Yeah. Shows you where her attention is going right now. She's not present to the moment. I imagine she wasn't a very happy person, if I had to.
No, probably not. It's interesting. I saw Eckhart Tolle talk about deferred satisfaction. So I don't want to take this as my concept, but it's a concept that I think was well said. So deferred compensation, we're all being told we're not good enough, right? From the very day we're born. So therefore, we're going to work as hard as we possibly can to be good enough per society's rules, right? Materialism, woman, man, get all that stuff, right? Once we defer our satisfaction enough, because we can't enjoy ourselves until we get there, okay? We finally get there and we're not happy. So what do? We defer our satisfaction again, but not because we feel like we have to defer our satisfaction, because we've been doing it for 20 years. Our brain, our neuroplasticity is already wired that way, so that when we get there, we are already like wired for deferred satisfaction. Yeah. So we get there, we can't be happy because we're wired that way. Wow. I thought it was very insightful on Eckhart Tolle's part, and it is an amazing analogy.
So maybe we could sum up this whole conversation by quantifying wealth, true wealth, as not deferring our satisfaction, but finding the satisfaction with this exact present moment in time. And the more that we find that satisfaction from just being here and now, the wealthier we are.
Yes. Yes. And I would add, if you allow me, I would add that, wealth, health, wealth, money, yes. Wealth, family, worth, knowing God intimately, is the ultimate wealth.
Yeah.
I mean, your connection with your creator is like the ultimate wealth. And it's like, how can you have, and also physical body, how can you have wealth if you don't have a balance of the spiritual, the mental, the physical, and the financial? You can't.
Yeah.
You can't. It's like, I'm just going to give you an analogy, right? It's like if I was sitting on this chair, right? And this chair had only one leg.
Yeah.
Do you know how difficult it would be for me to live life?
Yeah.
Now,
there's no peace because you got to hold the chair up.
Yeah, I'm sitting, I'd be completely uncomfortable, right? If you had two, right? I'd be like, maybe here, right? I'm like, oh, hey, Scott, how you doing? I'm balancing okay, right?
Yeah.
But you had three, maybe you could like balance it a lot better, but you're still not feeling a whole 100% yourself.
Yeah.
But if you have 4 pillars holding you up,
you can
relax, Wow.
Thank you for that. This has been an absolutely incredible conversation, and I'm so grateful for it.
Yeah.
And I'm so grateful for everybody to get to experience your wealth, which is your wisdom that you are now sharing with everybody with these 4 pillars. And I'm curious, where can people find you to learn more about this? And also, what do you want to share with the crowd? Like, what is it that you would like to...
just they can find me on Henry is Fulfilled. My book's going to be coming out in the next, whenever there's 2 publishers we're looking at. So whenever they decide, probably be sometime next year. It's being finished up right now. But they can find me under Henry is Fulfilled and Instagram. I'm not really that active on TikTok and don't post there much. But Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Find you on Instagram.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, thank you for tuning in to the Hard for Life podcast. It's been such an honor to have Henry here with me.
Yeah.
And I look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Have a beautiful day. Brother, bring it in.
Was that good?
That was
I do much better when I don't practice.
so good.
I looked at the questions and we were flowing.
That was so good. I'm like 10 out of 10 happy with how that went, especially for your first podcast. It's just fucking incredible.
Is that how they are?